Welcome to another episode of Graceful Curiosity, episode 19. We just finished our freshman year of college, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Michael doesn't know if he can handle all of my references, but that's okay. It's okay. He just doesn't accept me who I am,
We're rising sophomores now, right? Is
right?
that what they
Yeah,
call it
yeah,
these days?
yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
We're conquering the school,
Yeah.
you know. So
Mm.
yeah, and hopefully at this point you've survived a Texas winter since we
Yes.
got freezes coming.
Yeah, that's right.
So, got to wrap them plants, those pipes,
Hmm.
and just hope it's the best.
Yes, indeed.
You know, it's always good to get with hot chocolate. I don't know. Do you have any like? Because so for if y'all don't know, like I grew up about 8 years in Pennsylvania. Michael grew up in Ohio,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then still farther north than we are here was in Tennessee.
Hmm.
So, do you have any like when the storms are coming?
Yeah.
Like any traditions? Like I'm talking about
Yeah.
like winter storms, like
Yeah.
snowstorms.
Oh yeah.
With any traditions, like especially
Oh,
growing up?
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, you got to get some hot chocolate or some warm food. Get on the couch and put on a movie or go through a TV series. I mean, that's the best during bad
Yeah.
weather. So
My mom would always make chili, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
she'd put a bowl out and make snow ice cream.
Ah,
So,
interesting.
so you put the bowl out, like a big old bowl.
Hmm.
Put it like out on your back patio, and when the snow is freshly falling, so it hasn't touched the ground.
Right, right. Yeah.
But to be fair, that's recycled water, so it's probably not that great for us, anyways, right? You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
But then once the bowl's full, you put heavy cream in it and a little bit of
Interesting.
sugar,
Yeah.
and you mix it all up,
Huh.
and it makes snow ice cream.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah.
So that was like a tradition as a kid,
Yeah.
we do. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. But also, I remember like most of the time, if it was heavy snow, we weren't allowed outside. But once it stopped,
Hmm.
we went outside and we did all the things.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
snow angels to my family like to build giant igloos.
Mm.
You know the ones I'm
Hmm.
talking about? Like you
Yep.
actually like we could, because Texas doesn't experience this. You had enough snow to make like a igloo that like
Yes.
4 or 5 people could fit in.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
and
Hmm.
make a non-pathetic snowman if you
Yeah.
wanted, or actually have real snowball fights,
Yeah. Yeah.
that don't end in like 15 minutes,
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm fond of those.
Oh yeah.
This,
I was just telling my family the other day, man, I miss snow. I mean, if you're not from the north, then that probably seems crazy,
yeah.
but
But like when you're in the north, you're adapted for it.
exactly.
So the towns
Exactly.
have more than one snow plow.
Right.
They have a
That's right.
fleet
Hmm.
for each like little township,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
the salt's already been on the road overnight,
Hmm.
so it's gonna be fine. There's gonna
Exactly.
be very little ice,
Hmm.
and then people had chains in their tires, and people actually knew how to drive it
Yeah.
all. So compared to down here,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but this nostalgia.
Hmm.
So I do have a question for you, Michael.
Sure.
Who is your favorite celebrity?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, if it comes to entertainment, I really enjoy some of the great actors that we have. What comes to mind, I was thinking of like somebody like maybe Daniel Day-Lewis,
Hmm.
right? Who's I think won multiple Oscars for Best Actor, who was portrayed Abraham Lincoln, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
pretty recently. Yeah, so in my mind, yeah, he would be kind of a iconic celebrity in the entertainment world.
Yeah. I think I focus a little less on actors and more on directors. So
Mm-hmm.
I think of like Christopher Nolan.
Sure,
I
yeah.
have not met a movie he's made that I don't like.
Right, right.
And I love his like, deep philosophical or what have
Mm-hmm.
you, like how he tells a story and everything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Or like from the animation side, Hayao Miyazaki, who's basically the Japanese
Mm-hmm.
Walt Disney,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Mm-hmm.
he crafts still to this day, you know, his animation from hand.
Wow.
And just how he tells stories and how he writes stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I like to focus more on the creatives,
Sure. Yeah. Hmm.
the auteurs, as they
Yeah,
say,
that's right.
you
That's
know,
right.
you
Yeah.
know. But the reason why I bring this up is because for today's topic is celebrity culture.
Mm.
When I
Hmm.
use that phrase, what comes to mind for you,
Mm.
Michael?
Wow. Well, there's probably quite a bit. I mean, I think we live in a culture today where we're like constantly being inundated by kind of a media sphere that's like advocates different individuals, whether it is people in entertainment, actors, singers, musicians, or athletes, or
Or people that are famous just for being famous,
exactly. That's a whole new category
like the
that's come up.
Kardashians.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're exposed to like these cults of fame around certain individuals in our society. And it seems to me like, a great deal of the advertising and media output around these people sort of is designed to make us want to be like them
yeah,
or want to, emulate them and how we think and speak and act and dress and et cetera, et cetera. So there seems to be, yeah, we seem to be in a celebrity culture that is obsessed, with kind of propagating the personalities of these kind of individuals.
yeah, and even more so because I said people being famous for being famous.
Yeah.
There's even another category today.
Mm,
If you're on social media, you know the word influencer.
right.
Like
Yes.
there are people that are famous just because they're influencers. They're pushing products. They're
Hmm.
pushing whatever lifestyles
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like there's van influencers.
Yeah.
If you knew there's people that will basically whip up a bus and make it livable.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
whole like turning into their own RV, and
Mm,
then you watch them just traveling the country.
right.
Right? And then they have,
Yeah.
you know, I guess we just have an endless drought of uh, entertainment.
Mm,
From podcasters to YouTubers. Like it keeps on going on and on.
mm,
Like you can say, because I think some people will be quick to say, I'm not involved in celebrity
mm,
culture.
mm, mhm,
I'm not
mhm.
involved with the gossip mags or the
Yeah.
tabloids.
Yeah.
Who's dating who?
Right.
What has Taylor Swift done this week? You know,
Right.
but I think actually when you look at it,
Mhm.
our culture as a whole, American culture, is celebrity culture. It's something that's so inundated.
Yeah.
You know, whether because whether you think you're involved with it or not, the fact you're commenting on how you hate it, that's actually your part of it.
Yeah.
Or if you talk about, oh, well, celebrities back in my day are not like this,
Hmm.
you're involved in the
Exactly.
celebrity culture.
Exactly. You're a participant
Like,
in
you're
it.
participating. Like it's something that's all around us that you cannot get away from
Mhm.
unless, I mean, you live in a hole in Nebraska,
Mm.
and no one sees what's happening.
Right.
You're in your shelter. Maybe no, Nebraska's not a big place. Maybe Montana, but or you're in Alaska and you're just out there fishing with bears,
Mm.
you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but it's something that's we're surrounded by constantly. I would
Yeah.
say
Definitely.
that'd be a fair assessment.
Certainly. Yeah.
Um, but it's very prevalent. I know, especially it's very prevalent with many different types of people, even when people don't think they are.
Mm.
Like I said,
Yeah.
because people think it's something that's for the young.
Right.
No, no. I'm surrounded by people that are, and I'm like, no, you just have a different version of what your celebrity.
Yes, that's
Because
right.
I think the celebrity culture is so inundated. It would be safe to say is that the reason why it's so popular is because we see we see someone else's life and you want that,
Mm. Mm.
or it's like I find hope in this.
Yeah.
Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, I think so.
you
Hmm.
know because I think whether we realize it or not, celebrities doesn't just mean people that are in entertainment,
Mm.
because I think we do that with our politicians as well.
Hmm.
Every election cycle, Michael, I hear it.
Yeah.
They're going to save this country. My life's going to be better.
Right.
Whoever it is,
Hmm.
every election cycle, it doesn't matter who it is, who's
Yeah.
running.
Yep.
they find this like, you know, this is my savior. This
Yeah.
will make everything right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you see all this, but I see this all the
Oh
time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really astounding how, yeah, especially in the political sphere, whatever individuals end up being, the major party candidates are kind of advocated as messiahs, right?
Yeah,
For for our nation or for our society or whatever the case may be, where they're kind of viewed as someone who, as you said, is going to come and right all the wrongs and cure every injustice and punish every unpunished crime or whatever the case may be, right? So yeah, I mean, there's this idolatry
yeah,
really that's associated with not only just our politicians, but yeah, all these major individuals in our celebrity culture and in this influencer economy.
yeah. And I think it would be safe to say, because I just mentioned it's very ingrained in our American
Hmm.
culture, but I really think this is something that's been around since the history of humanity.
Mm.
You think of our king is going to save us, or General so and so is going to defend our lives and make it better, or Pharaoh, look at Pharaoh, or
Yeah.
I want to be like that priestess up there,
Mm.
like I think
Mm.
we're easily influenced,
Hmm.
of seeing other people
Yeah.
and wanting that,
Yes.
or
Hmm.
feel like they're going to solve our problems.
Hmm.
I think that's something that's always been around,
Right. Right.
in humanity, which I think in one way it can show the nature of like we're trying to fill a hole.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because really, I mean, what we're getting at, Michael, is like we shouldn't be putting our hope in
Yes.
these celebrities. We shouldn't
Yes.
be like, the next time Taylor Swift has an album is going to solve all of our problems and it's just going to resonate with life when
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
there's only one person that can fill that hole, and that is the actual Savior, and that's Jesus, right?
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
but we're quick to put other people
Hmm.
in that position,
Right.
or stealing from another episode we did, wrap our identity
Hmm. Hmm.
around that person, being
Yes.
Swifty, being a fan of the Eagles, because they have a hardcore fan base,
Sure.
or for you Ohio State, right?
Yes.
Or
Absolutely.
people out here that I say is a cult, you Aggies out there, you know. I'm probably gonna get some flack for that one,
That's
but
right.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Like it's so ingrained in us. It's hard not to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And that's because it's this the celebrity culture takes advantage of our human nature, sort as
Yeah,
you were saying, right? Because the main, you know, medium in which we learn or method through which we learn anything is imitation, right?
yeah, yeah,
From the moment we're born, looking to our siblings or our parents or whatever the case may be. So we're constantly being shaped and molded by the individuals that we choose to imitate, right? The problem with celebrity culture is that it's giving us, sort of as you alluded to, these kind of false models or models that take us away and draw us away from our ultimate model, who is Christ.
yeah,
And that's really, that in a certain sense, is the very definition of idolatry, right?
yeah.
A false God, a false entity to which we devote our time and attention and energy, and that we're supposed to shape our heart and mind to. So all these figures in the celebrity culture are, in a sense, uh, false idols, right? They're
Yeah.
they're models that don't draw us, they don't help us draw closer to Christ, but they instead want to draw us to them. And that's a very important distinction. And that also helps to explain a lot of the problems, right, that are caused by this almost worshipful attitude that so many individuals have to their celebrity icons.
Mm, mm, yeah, yeah. It's just so ingrained in us,
Hmm.
you know, and I mean, it goes back to us, we've been talking about with men's Bible study with Exodus of like the human need to worship,
Yes. Hmm.
you know. So, yeah. But the thing is, what's the sad thing is that celebrity culture has invaded the church. Would you say that?
Certainly. Hmm.
I mean, it's fair to say it's invaded everything, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you could be a chemist and you have your rock stars,
Hmm. Sure.
or you're a farmer and there's the certain people that are like he invented the. I'm being legitimate. I've
Yeah,
talked to people
absolutely.
like I'm
Absolutely.
like I don't know who this person is,
Yeah.
but he sounds like a wonderful person that made a lot of
Hmm.
difference in your field.
Sure. Sure.
But we all it invades everything.
Hmm.
You know, invades every niche.
Yes.
Um, But why do you think that's a problem for the church then?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's again safe to say that when we look at kind of what passes for mainstream Christianity in America, that in so many ways, so many different congregations and churches are dependent upon the personality and the charisma of one individual,
You
right?
can name names, Michael.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can definitely do that. I mean, we could read lists actually, probably of individuals who do this, but there's a significant issue with this notion of forming a religious community that is meant to be devoted to the worship of God, that is instead completely dependent on what one individual, what that individual can do for you,
Yeah,
that he offers you an entertaining worship service, or maybe an encouraging message, or maybe he builds your self-esteem, or
yeah,
whatever the case may be.
yeah. And we already have great examples of the failings of this.
Yes.
I think, Michael and I know this, but if you look into Mars Hill
Mm.
with Mark Driscoll and that, what happened there, they
Mhm.
had, we'll plug a podcast. It's on our podcast, but we'll send you there. But there's a podcast that I think it was Christianity Today that put it out
Mm.
was
Okay.
the rise and fall of Mars Hill, and it really examines the cult of personality that was formed around Mark Driscoll.
Yeah.
And, it became a church of Mark Driscoll and not a church of Christ,
Right. Right.
you know, and there was no accountability and everything fell apart and
Hmm.
that church
Hmm.
disappeared.
Yeah. Exactly. That's kind of where, where this whole issue becomes so problematic. Yeah, what happens when the singular charismatic individual is gone?
Yeah.
Then what is the church built upon? What is its foundation?
Yeah.
What is going to keep the people coming and devoting their lives to the worship of God? Nothing, right?
No.
And we've seen this, so many times in so many different congregations where an individual who has, been given this totally inordinate amount of power and influence for whatever reason, and unfortunately in our, in recent history, it seems to be primarily because of, moral failings of different kinds, they're removed from that office, or they, leave and start a different community elsewhere, whatever the case may be, and that community then no longer has any basis for coming together,
Mm.
because rather than being rooted in the identity of us as members of the body of Christ, right? As brothers and sisters in the Lord who come together to participate in the work of his kingdom. Instead, it was rooted on one person's charisma or personality, and that cannot sustain a spiritual community.
Yeah.
So that is just, one example of how destructive it can be to the life of the church for one individual to be given this celebrity status or celebrity, perspective.
Yeah. Um, I think it's hard because it is so. Because I think of especially Christian worship music as
Mm,
well
mm,
is probably, I think it's more prevalent there than celebrity pastors. You
mm,
think of who's producing, when you look on a Sunday, if you ever
mm,
read at the bottom, at least here at Grace, it's supposed to be at every church because if you want some inside baseball, all churches use a thing called CCLI, which is basically a licensing thing, so we can
Yeah.
use music.
Right.
So, but it says who writes the songs and who's the publishing group.
Hmm.
You should look how often it's from three people:
Hmm.
Elevation, Bethel, or Hillsong.
Yeah.
you know, because also each of them have their own publishing arms and
Right.
grouping. But these three churches, right, everything, they all have cult of personality. They all have, I would say, all of these three churches have some kind of heretical bent,
Mm.
whether it's Hillsong with prosperity
Yeah.
gospel, Bethel with New Age spiritualism,
Mm.
and then Elevation has a mix of cult of personality and uh, it's kind of a weird one to put it without calling out names. Stephen, their main guy, he's he doesn't use the Bible to preach,
Mm. Mm.
and there's a cult of personality around him,
Sure. Yeah.
um, and there's just no accountability with him.
Mm.
You know,
Wow.
um, so you when those three types of places are producing all of your music,
Hmm. Yeah.
you just kind of navigate that. So we've created this culture of somewhat, unless all churches decide we're going back to hymns,
Hmm.
because like us as Anglicans have such a deep hymn
Yes.
tradition,
Hmm.
but most of us don't use them anymore.
Mm.
So it's like it feels like we have this obligation to lean into the celebrity culture.
Mm.
Think of it with
Mm.
Bible studies as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
We got to use the new Matt Chandler Bible study,
Mm.
even though I do love Chandler. No hate on you, Matt Chandler. Um, uh, but you know what I mean. Like we have to use the next, or maybe Janine Allen or Louis Giglio, or like these people. We have to use the next one because
Mhm.
people won't come to our Bible study if we're just
Mm.
reading the
Mm.
Bible.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we have to use those types of celebrity names to draw
Hmm.
people in
Mm.
and stuff like, or teachers, or whatever they are, or we need to have this type of music,
Hmm.
what have you.
Yeah.
And I think, because I think the problems are more than just like an individual church might fall apart.
Sure. Sure.
It's something that's corrupted all of their churches because we use their
Yeah.
stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't think we think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a brilliant point, because it shows how the influence of celebrity culture has seeped into really the way that American Christians do church,
Yeah.
you know. And so, as you said, there's a whole host of problems can arise from allowing that influence to be so pervasive.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's all bad.
Sure,
I'm just
sure.
saying like this is where problems are created,
Yes. Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, like I said, I called out Matt Chandler, but I love Matt Chandler. He's a solid preacher, and he has, even though he's a celebrity preacher essentially, he actually has accountability in elders at his church
Mm-hmm.
that he can take him down anytime, and he has a whole group of preaching staff. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't preach every week,
Mm.
so like he's set up, even though he's the guy, he's at
Sure.
least, I think, he's one example of a celebrity pastor that I think is doing some things right.
Mm-hmm.
Raising up the next generation to take his place, and also, making sure that the church runs not solely dependent on him.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so where than others, it's solely dependent on that one
Right.
individual.
Right.
So I think you get good, you get bad, and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that kind of raises well, it allows us to kind of meditate for a minute on um, the benefits or the wisdom that is sort of inherent in the kind of episcopal structure that some of our denominations have inherited, and that we benefit from as
So
Anglicans.
I might as well ask.
Yes.
No, I know what it means, but for the people out there, what is an episcopal structure, or to use the fancier term, episcopal polity? What
Yeah.
does that mean?
Well, I think in the probably in the simplest way that we can describe it is that there's kind of a hierarchy in place, right?
Hmm.
Of going from, commonly we understand that, typically goes from a archbishop to a college of bishops to, individual bishops over diocese to then the rector or priest of your individual parish or church community. And it's
And
structured
then vestry over each
exactly.
individual church. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yes. So it's a structure that's been, in put in place and that's, developed over the centuries that's designed to kind of diffuse power, as it were, or
kind of
influence.
to use the American politics term, checks and balances, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it allows no one person to be indispensable
Yeah.
to the running of any individual congregation. I once heard a little expression from a priest I knew who said, the good thing about the system that is in place and within Anglicanism is that, if I went out tomorrow night and got hit by a bus on Saturday night, there would be another priest to come in on Sunday and preach the homily, offer the Eucharist, etc., and the life of the church would continue on, you know
Yeah.
would we be devastated and would we mourn, et cetera, et cetera? But the church would continue on because it's not rooted in one man's personality,
Yeah.
that it is built upon the foundation of the word preached and the sacrament given, and that is what I think is, in many ways, could be viewed as a wiser, more healthier alternative to what is more common in the celebrity uh, influenced sorts of church environments that we're discussing here. So that's just a little, as we say, a little plug for,
How we Anglicans do.
how the Anglican the Anglican way. But
Yeah.
but I think it is noticeable how different that is from what we
And it's
see
also, I
currently.
think it's also noticeable that most of the churches that get in trouble, they're kind of on their own.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
not in a system. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's fair to say. Well, that leads me to another question because, celebrities, it doesn't matter if they get in trouble or what have you, your opinion has changed, so it's not that life affecting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of Christian celebrities that have done good work,
Mm-hmm.
but then the fault of their character gets into play.
Yeah.
So I think of example of Ravi Zacharias.
Sure.
If you don't know who he is, he's a famous apologist. Wrote many books. You can find many of the good debates of his on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Certainly.
Um, but then after he died, it came out that he molested a couple people, and so, Michael, what do we do with that? Like, because the other thing is, recently Tony Evans got disciplined
Mm-hmm.
for having, I think it was an extramarital affair, right? Correct, or
Uh,
something
I'm
along
not
those lines.
positive, but
Something
yeah,
along those
something
lines.
probably along those
Um, and he's done a lot of work,
lines. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, So what do we do with these people that have fallen from grace? Is that a
Yeah.
good word to put it from? Or like have sinned really badly,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to do how to separate them
Yeah.
from their work.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think there's necessarily an easy answer, a perfect kind of solution to this problem, but my initial sort of reaction is that I think historically it's more valuable for the church to, rather than sort of completely anathematize a person where they are banned, shunned, and forgotten about, as it were, that we essentially sort of attempt to, keep the good and dispense with the bad. I mean, the reality is that many of the individuals that you mentioned brought people to Christ, right?
Yeah,
Through their preaching and teaching and their various ministries and utter and participated in changing the eternal destiny of many people, you know,
Yeah.
and that work for the kingdom remains, you know, and
Yeah, you can still pick up someone's book.
exactly, yeah, and I mean, you know, you mentioned, you know, Ravi Zacharias. I've personally benefited from some of his books, you
Yeah.
know. So I think rather than necessarily, you know, saying this person and their work is anathema to us, we simply keep in mind that this person, like every believer, whether you're a lay person or a clergy person, whether you're someone who attends a small church or whether you're a celebrity mega pastor, you and the final analysis are uh, simply a sinner saved by grace,
Mm.
right? And that we are all constantly wrestling with our sinful nature and trying to pursue the sanctification that God desires for us. And so, you know, with that light in mind, I think we can still benefit from the work of these individuals while keeping in mind that this person was flawed and that this person um, perhaps conducted themselves very poorly in different situations. Maybe they even, you know, committed crimes, et cetera, et cetera. So we can sort of try to strike a balance between completely shunning individuals and um, turning a blind eye to
Yeah.
their sinfulness, which is also a problem in the other extreme,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That we've seen in many, many churches where there isn't accountability or mistakes that are made are kind of papered over and ignored, you know, which we can talk about as well. But yeah, I think my instinct would be to strike a balance between those extremes, you know, and valuing and upholding the good work that was done, while acknowledging the fallenness of
Yeah.
these individuals.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think there is an easy answer. And
Hmm.
it's, you know, I'll use Ravi because
Hmm.
that's probably the one that's most pertinent to my
Yeah,
own life.
yeah.
You know, like I still have a couple of his books in my library, right?
Hmm.
And you know, they have really good arguments about our faith against other faiths or
Sure.
ways to defend our faith or the reason why we believe this and that.
Hmm.
So I think the work's still good, but it's like you separate the individual from that
Yeah.
and you focus on, you know, it's like you don't even acknowledge who the author is on the front page and more of just read the material about defending your faith or
Hmm.
how to have this conversation with so and so.
Hmm.
Because that would be my approach as well,
Yeah.
you know. But also, that I think that just shows more and more, you know, why we need to be aware and be on guard with the celebrity culture.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Hmm.
the difference between celebrities out there is that, you know, a normal celebrity, you know,
Hmm.
they're not attached to anything that's, you know, outside of themselves.
Hmm.
Where like Ravi or Tony Evans are
Hmm.
attached to God.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger deal. At least I think so, Michael. I
Hmm.
think that's a bigger
Yeah, I
deal.
understand. Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
so we have to keep that in mind. They shouldn't shape just like I think this for anyone, celebrity or not, is like not one person at church should shape our feelings towards God. It should be separate.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, you know, I think the traditional understanding of what it means to, you know, be a leader in the community of God is to help facilitate the spiritual journey, right,
Yeah.
of its members to ever greater knowledge and love of God. So it's rather, you know, it's a vocation of directing and accompanying people as they grow in faith, not um, not directing that attention to oneself or to the brilliance of your teaching or the eloquence of your preaching or or if we're talking about worship, to the incredible musical skill and talent of, the worship team, whatever the case may be. It's not uh, the pastoral ministry is not directed toward the minister. It's directed toward God and bringing people along in that pursuit of God.
Hmm.
So anytime that function deviates toward the self, toward the individual, toward the personal charisma of one person, then the vocation of the pastor to a certain extent has been lost.
Hmm.
And that's where so much trouble can arise, as we've seen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
You know, if you to sum it all up, every culture equals bad, right? No, no. I mean, it really just comes down to like we need to be aware of who can really affect our lives and who can't,
Yes. Yes, exactly.
and who we should wrap our identity in.
Right. Exactly. And there is no substitute for Christ.
Yeah.
There's no role model, there's no example, there's no pattern to that will fulfill our deepest desires and fulfill our deepest yearnings other than the person of Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
So we have to pick our role models carefully. In other words, or in our case, we have one, right? Who is Jesus.
Hmm. He's our celebrity pastor.
That's right.
I mean, he's probably. Like, I think it would be arguable that he's probably the most known person in history, even though there's people in this world that haven't.
I
If you
think
think, if
so, yeah.
you think of all the people that have,
Hmm.
for the last 2,000 years, we
Right,
add them up.
right.
Who do people know more, Jesus or Taylor Swift?
Hmm.
I keep on using Taylor, but she is the biggest celebrity, I think. So that's safe to say. Is that a safe
Pretty
assumption?
close, yeah. At least she's got to
Yeah,
be up there,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Henry.
I'm Michael.
We'll see you next time.
God bless.